Hi guys, little story while we're self-isolating. Okay, can't wait to see you again next week. But let's have a little go at The World's Worst Children by David Walliams. By the way, it's not you guys. Okay, so our first chapter. We're going to read all about Dribbling Drew. Once upon a time there was a boy named Drew. Drew dribbled a lot. This wasn't normal everyday dribbling, the odd globule of gob-gloop running down your chin. Oh no, this was dribbling on an industrial scale. Here was a boy who could dribble litre upon litre of dribble each day. Now you may wonder why Dribbling Drew dribbled so much. Well, it was because he was an incredibly lazy individual. If he could, he would sleep 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And as Drew snoozed, he drooled. Snore, plop, went the drool as it landed on the floor. On school mornings, the boy would have to be dragged out of his bed by his feet. If he had his way, Drew would be wheeled to school every morning in his bed, and as soon as he arrived at school, he would go straight back to sleep. Drew liked nothing more than having a nice long snooze during his lessons. He had even been known to take a sleeping bag into school. That way he could doze through every single subject. PE was a hard one to sleep through, but Drew found a way. For example, during football matches, he would ask to be in goal and then climb up onto the net and have a nap. If any of the kids scored a goal, he would moan if they celebrated too loudly and woke him up. Because Drew slept through every single lesson, he always found himself bottom of the class. When Drew snoozed in lessons, he would dribble all over his desk. The dribble would trickle down onto the floor, where a large puddle of drool would collect. If the lesson was dreaded double history, the dribble would end up something of quite a pool. No one knew quite what it was in Drew's dribble. It was transparent like water, but it was thick and sticky like glue. One time, his history teacher, Miss Past, ran over to Drew's desk to shout at him for falling asleep again. The unfortunate lady slipped on the dribble, shot across the floor, and flew straight out of the window. Ah! She was found upside down in a nearby hedgerow, with her tweed skirt over her head and her big frilly knickers flapping in the wind. The day our story starts, there was a school trip to the National History Museum. This was a wondrous place, full of all sorts of treasures, from moon rock to dinosaur skeletons. The museum even housed a life-size cast of a blue whale. As Drew's class pulled up outside the museum in the school coach, Mr. Nummings, the science teacher, handed out his dreaded worksheets. Now listen carefully, children. On these worksheets, I want you to make a list of all the exhibits you see in the museum today. Do we have to, sir? Moaned Dribbling Drew, stifling a yawn. Dozing on the coach for an hour had tired the boy out, and he was now ready for bed. A pool of drool had collected at his feet. Yes, Drew, we do have to, yelled the teacher. And I want you to stay awake during this visit. Mr. Nummings turned back to the rest of the class. Now, everyone, the pupil who writes down the most exhibits will come top of the class. So keep looking and listening the whole time. Right, out you get. As they walked in through the museum's giant wooden doors, all the children marvelled at the huge skeleton of a diplodocus, which took pride of place in the great hall. But Drew simply yawned. Then he broke away from his teachers and classmates and found a nice quiet place to have a nap. It was on the top of a glass case housing a stuffed dodo, a bird that had become extinct centuries before. No one would disturb him up there. Drew climbed up using a stuffed giraffe as a ladder. He lay down and closed his eyes. Then the boy slept and slept and slept and dribbled and dribbled and dribbled. The boy could sleep absolutely anywhere, standing up at a rock concert, hanging upside down from a tree, even on a roller coaster, as everyone around him screamed. This particular day, Drew slept for so long that he was still asleep when the Natural History Museum was locked up for the night. Without anyone realising, he was still there when all the lights were turned off. All night Drew slept, and all night Drew dribbled. Drew dribbled and dribbled and dribbled, and then he dribbled some more. As the spot of drool beneath him spread into a puddle, soon it was a lake of spittle. By dawn, Drew's sea of dribble had filled the entire Natural History Museum. In the morning, Winston, the burly security guard, arrived bright and early to unlock the doors and open the museum, as he did every single day. However, this was no ordinary day. The first thing Winston noticed was a transparent fluid oozing underneath the doors. That's very strange, he thought out loud. Maybe one of the daft old professors has left a tap running. Next, the security guard dipped the toe of his boot into the liquid and realised it couldn't be water from a leaky pipe. Whatever this was, it was thick and sticky. Worried that the museum might have been flooded, Winston opened the giant wooden doors as fast as he could. Nothing could have prepared Winston for what happened next. Whoosh! A tidal wave of drool washed him clean off his feet, and he found himself travelling at speed down the street. Wah! The big man screamed like a baby. Closely behind the security guard floated some of the biggest exhibits from the museum. A stuffed polar bear, the life-size cast of a blue whale, even the diplodocus skeleton. They all bobbed along the streets of London on this rushing river of dribble. Atop the glass case that had housed the dodo was Drew. In all the commotion, he had finally woken up from his long sleep. As he floated down the road, the flood of his own spittle destroyed everything in its path. Cars, lorries, and even buses were swept off the ground and began bobbing along on the colossal ooze of drool. Drew leaped off the glass case onto a nearby building. From that safe place, he watched more of the exhibits from the museum pass by. Giant's bird's eggs, a stuffed gorilla, a model of an elephant. The boy reached into his blazer pocket. He still had the worksheet Mr. Numbings had given him at the beginning of the school trip. Drew made a note of everything he saw. Every single exhibit from the museum floated past, and he wrote them all down. Mars rock, a Neanderthal skull, a marble statue of Charles Darwin, a giant squid, a stuffed vulture, an earthquake machine, a model T-Rex. The list went on and on. A seahorse pickled in a jar, a model volcano, a fossil of a prehistoric fish, a spacesuit, a stuffed giraffe, an old lady hanging onto a shopper. Oh, hang on, that's a real old lady hanging onto a shopper. A model of a woolly mammoth. To his credit, Dribbling Drew spent hours listing everything he saw as the gushing river of drool swept all the museum's exhibits out to sea. The next day in class, Drew proudly handed in his worksheet to Mr. Numbings. Aside from a few spots of dribble, it was perfect. After looking through all his pupils' work, the science teacher announced the results. I can reveal that the winner, with 100%, is Drew, said Mr. Numbings. The boy was top of his class for the first time. Before he was promptly expelled. As a punishment for destroying everything in the Natural History Museum, Drew was put to work there. His job was to reassemble the diplodocus skeleton that had been recovered from the bottom of the sea. He was not to stop until this giant jigsaw was finished. Dribbling Drew didn't get any sleep for the next 10 years. And tomorrow I'll read you Bertha the Blubberer. Be good, be safe.